in this turbulent times, you have in one hand faith and in the other hand politics. But we forget what faith is supposed to bring us to, and that is the following. We have within us a prophetic voice, a prophetic way of looking at things that is part of faith. It's not just doctrine. It's not just we're just a good person, but we have a way to speak to the politic of our day and say to them, there's a new way of doing things rooted deeply in love and nonviolence. And so we have to get ourselves ready for that. We got to know how to express it. We have to know how to enter into it. And also, if it's prophetic voice, we have to learn how to agitate by respecting who we challenge, but also calling forth a new way of being, a new way of how we need to address what's going on. Well, sometimes we have to begin to realize that we have to look at our faith, but again, also the politic. And the question is, can we just have our faith and avoid politic? That is the question that I try to struggle with and answer within myself. So what does it mean? You have to always apply your faith to the politic. You always have to. Because if not, then your faith is caught in a vacuum. And the vacuum is you and Jesus, you and Jesus. It's never we and Jesus, we and Jesus. And especially when it calls for the less among us, the people that are suffering the most, the ones that we're called to say, hey, listen, culture, you can't do this to people. You can't oppress them. You can't put them down. You can't do all those things that are harmful. So when we see that, we have to begin to start feeling their pain, which means we have to have a sense of compassion, but also we have to move to a movement of love and begin to challenge the systems that are oppressing and doing things and putting people down. It's always the least among us. We are a voice. That is the prophetic voice, to stand for them and with them and say, hey, this is not right. We need a new element of justice that is transformative. In other words, what we have to look at, what we have to try to struggle with is, at this time in our country, how do we stand in this moment? Do we say, oh, just let it go? Or does our faith drive us into the chaos? Does our faith drive us into what we're seeing? We can never say, no, I'm not going to get involved if our faith is alive in the Lord. Because it's not you who is moving to care for the broken and to care for that which needs to be. It's God working in and through you to begin to help and to free others. So when a culture or a country turns on the least among us, when it turns on to the little ones, we have a moral obligation to stand up, to speak, to resist, and to be their voice, And we do it in the sense that we are enfleshing God's love to those who are doing it, but those who are receiving this punishment, this really ugly piece of hurt upon them. So we are the very voice and power and hand of God in saying, yes, your God is with you. Yes, your God loves you, and he wants you to know he's with you in the struggle. So rely on his strength to stand up and not be afraid to be put down. If we are with our family, and some of them maybe don't think what we're doing is right, or they don't see the radical demands of the gospel, or they don't really understand the prophetic voice that we have been baptized in, which they also have been baptized in. So what does it mean? How do we relate to them? How do we talk to them? Sometimes the best way of talking to them is just to witness what you're doing. Let them see it, talk about what you're doing, and let it sit. In other words, what you're saying to your family, you're going to hold what you're going to do. You're going to do what you want to do at this time, and it may be completely radically different from the gospel. So what you do is you sow seeds of love. You sow seeds of justice. So you sow seeds of wonderful compassion. But you got to witness it and show it and not keep your voice locked up in a closet, but to let them see, let them hear. This is what I'm called to, and I hope in some ways that you'll be able to embrace the same thing with your own way and your own style. I am calling to my mind right now, holy resistance. And I want to image Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a theologian in the Lutheran Church during the reign of Adolf Hitler. And he basically did a lot of resistance. And the Third Reich, they hated him for it. In fact, he had to pay a great price at the end. The war was pretty much over, but they wanted to kill him because they just didn't like the fact that he was a thorn in the side. So holy resistance basically means, first, you got to know how to commit yourself and understand and study and practice nonviolence in all aspects of your life. All aspects of your life. You got to learn also that I respect and I hold up anyone that I'm going to resist against. I'm not going to say things or do things that are harmful to them. I'm going to respect them, but I'm going to challenge them. And I'm going to basically give witness to the fact that what you're doing is unjust. I'm not judging them. I'm not saying they're bad. What I'm saying to them is, how do we begin to adjust this or address this issue that we're trying to resolve together? So again, it's really just trying to sow God's seeds of love on someone who is you are resisting against, or a group who you are resisting against. Sowing seeds of love, realizing that maybe it only may land on a little fertile patches there in the people. And it might not grow for a while. But I believe over the long haul, because God is the one who's watering that seed, God will finally break through to their hearts and their life will change. What are some practical things that you and I can do in relationship to an oppressive regime? What is it? So here's some of the things we might want to look at. First, nonviolent boycotts, nonviolent marches, nonviolent organizing in small groups and beginning to challenge people that are around us. What can we do very simply is we can make phone calls, we can write papers, we could be on videos, but we have to know what we're talking about, and we have to, again, it's nonviolence, and you don't need to attack or put down those who are caught in the whole arena of Donald Trump. You know, they're caught into a cult, and therefore, I got to be gentle with them, but you can't be afraid to do the things you need to do in a nonviolent way in order to awaken within them that maybe they're barking up the wrong tree. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the time for all of us to let go of just checking into our religion or our faith and saying, okay, at least I went to services, or at least I've been a nice person. You got to step up. You got to look at what the demands Jesus placed forward in his gospel teaching. You got to study. You got to be willing to look at it. What does it mean to love your enemies? What does it mean to do good to those who hate you? Bless those who are cursing. What does it mean to feed the hungry? What does it mean to give drink to the thirsty? What does it mean to live the radical demands of the gospel? You got to spend time praying with and wrestling with the scriptures. Jesus taught a radical demands. He basically challenged the system. And because they challenged the system, what happened? They had to kill him. They had to kill him because he was shaking up a way of being in life. And he said, this is not of God. This is not of what life should be all about. The essence and purpose of what we're all called to do is love the unlovable. We're all called to love and be a voice, as I said, for all the little ones, all the people that are being persecuted, all the people that are going to get caught in webs of destruction. We just can't sit back and say, oh, I'll pray for you. No, you got to get your hands dirty. You got to jump in the pool, and you got to say, now is the time for me to live the gospel. Now is my time to embrace my faith in the power of Jesus Christ. Now is the time for all of us to say, enough is enough. We cannot constantly put down the poor, put down the sick, take everything in order to continue to somehow give a wonderful tax break to those who don't need anything but greed.